Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Everyman's Arsenal, a podcast where we arm you with knowledge and tools to thrive in any situation. And today we're honored to have, I would say, a true titan of preparedness, Boston, the founder and driving force behind Javlin Concepts. And from stories with Walsh, guy's a legend. I'd say Javelin Concepts has become synonymous with excellence and real world effectiveness. And now joining us, Boston.
What's going on, man?
Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, thanks for having me, bro. That's
Appreciate
exciting.
you. Yeah, appreciate you taking some time to chat with us.
Of course.
We were talking a lot kind of before we officially started here, and I was just enjoying the interaction. I was like, man, I wish I would have recorded that because it's just I don't know, I love talking to people, and it's natural learning about
Mm.
people. And one of the goals that we have is, the gear that we show off on the channel. I'm always interested in the why behind it. Like, why
Yeah.
did someone design something this way? What are their experiences, and kind of what's their background? And that's something that we usually start off on any of these episodes is um, the background. Like, so we know that you're the founder of Javelin Concepts. We've seen some stuff on the channel before, but what is it about your background that you're willing to share that
Mhm.
got you to where you are now?
Yeah. So yeah, I have 75th Ranger background. All the guys who work here actually are all former First Bat dudes.
Oh, cool.
So I'd say the stuff that got me interested is I started out as just an 11 Bravo infantryman, and then I worked my way over to the sniper section. And then I had like a unique opportunity timeline wise where I went through a lot of different plate carriers. By the time I had left the military, I'd gone through like 4 separate issued plate carriers, right? We'd use different gear here and there from different companies. But when you initially show up and you use the gear that you're initially issued, it is what it is, right? And then you get something new and you're like, oh, okay, this is better in this way, this is worse in this way, and you have kind of something to compare it to, right? So didn't think much about my gear at all, other than it was super cool when I first got there, when I first showed up, like first training cycle, the stuff's heavy, it's uncomfortable, it's what it is, it's a plate carrier, right? But then you're getting issued newer stuff, better stuff. You work your way over sniper section where all those plate carriers are super low vis and more comfortable, but they still have different limitations. I'd say I'd combine all of that with like my second deployment to Afghanistan. I actually linked up with like these dudes who had like a little sew shop, and we made some cool stuff. And then I was like,
Oh,
dude, this is wild. Like, having never sewn anything, made anything, I didn't know anything about sewing. I was like, dude, it must be impossible to make mag pouches. Like, I don't know how many years of experience you need or whatever. The guy whipped it up in 20 minutes and it solved like a
oh,
major problem I had on this deployment. I was like, dude, this is awesome. So I think a couple experiences like that when I got out, I was like, yeah, I think I'll definitely mess with that more. And I did.
that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's a lot of the stories that we hear from companies that are gear related companies. The startup is usually somewhat similar. Like, I had this problem, I had this hole in my gear that I needed filled.
Mhm.
And so no one was making it. And I decided, okay, well, I'm going to make it, or I'm going to have someone make it. So what would you say then was the transition from your time as active duty? I don't know if you're still active duty, but your time in the military to Javelin Concepts. Like, there was that part of you did some sewing while you were
Mhm.
deployed. Like, did you just come home and you're like, I'm going to start making gear for myself, and then buddies asked you about it?
It was a little bit of a slow transition. So like there were a couple events that had probably I could back up to, like that's probably like the inception point that put the idea into my mind where like, oh yeah, I should
Okay.
make a gear company because of like X, Y, and Z, right? There were a couple instances like that, but no, when I got out, like I'm no longer active duty. So I did get out in 2017, but no, I didn't like get out to start a gear company. I was gonna like go to college like everybody else. I did that for like a little bit while I was kind of like fiddling with a bunch of different ideas for a bunch of different things. And one of those things was Javelin. My older brother is actually the one who taught me how to sew. And as I got better
Oh,
with
cool.
that, I was like, oh, no, yeah, this is it. This is it. So, yeah, I pretty soon after that, I think by 2019, after getting out in 2017, I had made Javelin the full time gig. and all of my
Uh,
efforts were working towards that. But it was a pretty quick transition moving to Javelin from getting out of the military, but it wasn't immediately. It was kind of gradual. I did some other stuff for a little bit,
yeah.
bartending included, which was fun.
Okay.
But I mean, no, as soon as I started messing with designs and started to get like kind of good at it too, I was
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, this is the one.
Yeah.
This is the one. Yeah.
And what would you say, like when you say you started to get good at it, was it something for you yourself, you designed something, you're like, I really like this? Or was it feedback from others that led you to believe like, oh, this is good?
It was definitely both. So the only thing that somebody else has designed for me was in 2015 or 14, whenever it was, my second deployment while I was
Hmm.
overseas. I had this like low vis plate carrier and it didn't have anything to carry mag pouches on the front. So like I just brought two of my magazines to this little sew guy and I was like, hey man, I need a way to carry this. Like it could attach if it just had some hook Velcro on the back and some loop Velcro on the front. It was super simple, right? And he got it done in like 20 minutes. And I was like, whoa, nice. But that was the only thing that anybody else has ever designed for me. So since that
Okay.
day, anything I've made, I've been the one to design. And it was definitely a combination. Initially, when making a lot of the gear, it wasn't like in the early days, it wasn't the quality of the gear. It was like the ideas and like the
Mhm.
designs that were like super interesting. And I had started to get good at like the skills at sewing and making things look like aesthetically very pleasing and very durable and all the different cool materials you can work with. That
Yeah.
definitely came a little bit later, like soon thereafter, starting for sure. But initially, it was kind of like the ideas going into some of the designs, putting some new stuff out there for the guys to get their hands on, and then the feedback as well. They're like, "Oh yeah, no, this is very cool." Especially once we started to get feedback from people that were lines like, "Oh no, yeah, of course this is how it should be." Like that's a great piece of feedback. As soon as you put anything in front of somebody and they have like that lights on moment where they're like, "Oh yeah, no,
Right.
this is how it should be." You really know you're onto something. So
Yeah.
we had that a few times, and I mean, I think that's the positive reinforcement I needed to just keep going for it, like full speed ahead. So,
Well, and I love that idea. And one of the things we joke about with a company, let's say for Leupold,
mhm.
I don't know if you're familiar with the Devo that they came out with a few years back. It was this, I think it was a fixed 10x optic that sat pretty low on your AR, and it had these weird side. It was cool, it was innovative, but it didn't really work very well. But instead of them taking this product that was kind of cool and innovative and trying to make it better, they were just like, nah, it didn't sell, scrap it. And
Yeah.
this idea of you that you're saying is like that I'm interpreting it as I made this product, it was good, but I can make it better. Like
Mhm.
how do I take this and make this better? Oh, I can get better at sewing, make things look better. Well, someone said that they need X, Y, and Z on it. I agree with that. That's going to make this item better. Instead of just scrapping it and saying, well, let's start all over.
Yeah.
You don't see a lot of companies that, well, I shouldn't say that. Um, it's not it's not as common to see companies that do that and build upon previous successes. And it's cool to hear that you did that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. It's definitely fun to take a product and then look at it from like a bunch of different angles. One thing that's fun to do from a design point of view is if like you're making a cummerbund, for example, right? A fun
Sure.
place to start the design process is to imagine that any way that it's been done before is off the table. Like for whatever reason, like the rules of the new design are you can't use any way that's been done before, right? So what you end up doing is you end up going in a bunch of weird directions, most of them not good, but it's a really fun like creative process where you like do a bunch of cool design things, and then by the end of it you obviously like loosen up on that rule. Now I can use just like kind of basic design features or whatever, right? But you have a bunch of different like pools to pull from now, from all those different like kind of exercises you went along, right? So you designed it 12 different super weird ways, right? Now most of those ways aren't good, but you learn like little design things along the way. So that way, when I
Yeah.
go back to just making like the best version of like a cummerbund or whatever, right? You have a huge like a toolbox to pull from. So super fun.
Yeah, and I wasn't in special forces or with Ranger battalions or anything like that. But one of my really good friends was a seventh group guy there at
Mhm.
well they moved down to Eglin Air Force Base. But one of the things that you're saying kind of reminds me of things that like SF or maybe even the Ranger battalion guys go through. Of here's an objective. What are all the ways that we can reach that objective? So it's interesting to me, and I'm curious if you view it this way, that your training and your experiences in the military have helped shaped your mind to look at a problem on the gear world the same way.
Probably because like I was an infantryman on my first deployment only, and then I was a sniper for all of the other deployments. So I had a team leader on my second one, and then on my third deployment, I was the team leader, right? And
Yeah,
as a sniper, like your freedom of like maneuver on like any mission you're out on is, I mean, it's like you're you're unrestricted in movement. Like there's no one to tell me where I'm gonna go or whatever, right? So
right.
I can really like look at kind of the mission set and the details of it and be like, okay, I think I'm going to go over here and I'm going to bring this weapon system and I'm going to bring this night optic instead of like maybe a thermal instead of another device, right? So you
Mhm.
do have like a ton of freedom of choice with how you do things, what you do with what equipment and whatnot. So probably had an effect for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never really been used to like restrictions and like thinking or anything like that. So that's all definitely helped. And that's not just like military, that's like my whole life really. So
Yeah.
definitely helpful for sure.
I'm curious if there's been any instances in your time as the founder of Javelin where you have an idea and you can't execute because we don't have the technology isn't there yet to carry out this idea that I have, and once technology kind of catches up to my brain, then we can execute. Or are you pretty much free to do everything that you want to based on the materials and the equipment that you have?
Yeah, there'd be some cool things to do, like if there was different materials to work with. But one of the ways I got pretty lucky is when I was coming onto the scene and starting to design a lot of this stuff, they had really just been doing some cool new stuff with new materials. So I was
Okay.
like, yeah, so like all of the laminates that's like pretty standard for a lot of people to use now, those were at the time like pretty new, right? Like if you think back to the Cry JPC, right? It's got those shoulder portions that are made out of that material. That material used to be something different. I don't know why they changed it, but then they changed it to this Hank material, which is like high abrasion resistance neoprene coated Kevlar is the acronym or something like that, right?
Okay.
Which was fun to find like as like a brand new gear maker trying to find like what is that material, right? On Google, high abrasive resistance neoprene coated Kevlar is not the first thing you're going to type into Google to try to find
Right.
out what it is, right? But there were cool materials like that. There's cool materials like Tegris. There's cool materials that Brookwood puts out like all the time. Um, I mean, yeah. So I definitely had some cool toys to play with right out the gate. So there wasn't too much that I'd wish I'd had because right from the start, new materials were being presented to me like all the time.
Yeah.
So not too many restrictions. I was pretty happy to play with the tools at hand.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Now, when thinking of changes, I know we talked about, when you started off, you thought, okay, this is good, but I can make this look better.
yeah.
What would you say is the number one motivation behind any changes that you might bring to a product?
Yeah, so it depends on the product, right? So like again from military experience and civilian experience combined, I mean I've used a ton of different things for a bunch of different things, right? So the things you're doing on mission as like a sniper are way different than as like a saw gunner, right? Like your experience is much
Yeah.
different. Saw gunners just carry weight, a ton of it, and it's gonna suck. As a sniper, maybe you're not moving so much, but like you need access to a lot of different things, right? That's like some of the inspiration behind stuff like our jackpack and its detachable configuration, right? For some people, it's not an issue having your pack fixed to the backpack, right? You can just have your buddy grab it, right? But if you're like kind of by yourself, like kind of separated from the group, like, man, I need to be able to reach that stuff by myself, right? So there were a lot of different like experiences to pull from when like designing some of the things. Um, and I where was I going with that? Could you remind me of the question? I'll pick up where I
So,
left off.
yeah, what was the number one motivation behind any changes that you might bring to a
Oh,
product?
oh yeah, 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 yeah. So definitely dependent on the design, right? There's probably like different motivations, but a lot of the things that I was seeing when designing all of the products is a lot of different companies would do them the same as each other with minor differences than each other, right? So if
Okay.
you're going to make a product, it's like, okay, well, like, yeah, I could put out another pair of plate bags and like make it look different, but how does it function differently, right? That's a big thing, just so that one, people have options. And then most of the time, the thing that you're if they're not doing something and you're thinking of a design to do something different, it's obviously to do something different, not just for the sake of doing something different, but so that it adds a benefit, right? So it is kind of product dependent. But yeah, that's most of the time what you're looking at. What's not been done before? What would be cool if you could accomplish, right? Um, and you kind of go from there.
Yeah, and it's interesting that I write take notes because otherwise
Mm.
I'm going to forget other
Yeah.
questions that I might want to ask you. Um, so you were saying early on in the podcast you had talked about how you look at a problem that you might face and how do I do this in a way that hasn't been done before was
Mm.
kind of an initial thought process, and it gives you all these avenues to kind of think outside the box. But with what you were just saying, I'm curious if there's ever a time that you look at some other company and good or bad, you see something that they do that is really, really bad. And that gives you an idea of, you know what, I can do that, but I can do it this way and make it better. Or, oh, this company is doing this idea that I have.
Mm.
Um, and so I'm going to go a completely different route to maybe not make it better in the useful sense, but better in terms of what Javelin Concepts can bring to market. So,
Yeah.
do you find any type of motivation from other companies, positively or negatively, affecting decisions that you might make on the design side?
Sometimes, if I'm designing stuff, I tend to look at what other companies are doing way towards the end because I don't want anything they're doing or have done to influence like kind of how I'm thinking about them, right? So
Okay.
it's really just me and my thoughts designing stuff until I'm pretty far down it, and then I'll start to kind of like see what other companies are doing. And sometimes you'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's really cool. I really like that." Other times it's like, oh yeah, that's a maybe a cool idea that's not going to work super well, right? You'll see a lot of things that look really cool, and then it's like, you've never worn that, have you? Or like,
Yeah.
you've never taken that on mission, because that would not work, dude. Really cool looking, but sometimes you can see like, yeah, no, that's not gonna fly, dude. That's not gonna fly. Or
Yeah.
like comfort, like especially you'll look at some things and be like, no way, no way. Super cool look, it's super cool function, but like that is going to be so uncomfortable. That's going to dig in here, here, and here, and like whatever. So yeah, you'll definitely have some inspiration to pull from some stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, so my experience when I was prepping, when I was at our deployment training my first
Mm.
time, my sergeant, I they gave me, we were issued, I think MSA made them at the time, but it was a Paraclete. It might be its own company now.
Okay.
And so we have the Paraclete, and there was gobs of pouches and all sorts of stuff. And I'm a new guy, and I'm just like, I don't I don't what do I do with all this? And I remember my sergeant came up to me and he was like, "You want two things on your carrier: something to plug holes and something to make holes."
Yeah. Yeah.
Like so mag pouches and an IFAC is all you need for your deployment right now. And then I think it's kind of cool because as you use the gear, then you're like, where am I going to put my radio? Where am I? You know
Mm.
what? Sometimes I need a little sticky pad and a pin, so I need an admin pouch.
Mm.
Not everyone does. Like not everyone has something like that, but um, it's interesting to hear you talk about that because as someone that my mind is not geared towards gear design, but I totally understand what you're saying when you're talking about how yeah this is going to work or this is not going to work, and I've kind of lived through that.
Mm.
Um, and so it's interesting. I'm curious how much I don't know if bias is the right word, but I that's the only one that's coming to mind. Like
Yeah.
how much
Sure.
bias might be playing in with your thoughts and why you don't want to look at other companies early on in the design phase because you don't want to have some type of bias injected into what you're designing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I feel like that was a long-winded way to say, are you doing your due diligence to keep bias out of your design process?
I think so. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would definitely hope so. Yeah. So I'll look at like other designs for a couple reasons. If there's a better way to do something than the way that I've come up with, okay, I should scrap what I'm doing and do it a better way, right? You also got to make sure that you don't copy people, right? If I come up with something and it looks exactly like somebody else's thing, well, that's not very good for a couple of reasons. It's copying them and it's already been done. So it's not beneficial. That product already exists and that benefit is already out there, right? So, I think initially it's a creative aspect why you're not looking at other people's designs so that like maybe I'll come up with different solutions, right? So instead of uh, starting with somebody else's good design and improving from there, it's more beneficial to me from a creative point of view, come up with my own thing, then look at other people's designs and then see if I can combine the thing that I've made with that thing and make it better, right? So like if I
Right.
have my little thing over here, your cool design over here, okay, well, I don't want to copy that. That benefit's already out there, and I don't want to be a dick and just copy that. How can I maybe improve that and combine them, right? So I think it just gives you more like tools to play with, right? Like more,
Yeah.
it's more of a creative process than like a anything like that.
Have there ever been times where you've you've done that kind of in your bubble? You come up with a design for a product, and you're like, okay, I have this design. You go look elsewhere, and it's like, oh, this person's are they already did that.
No, that hasn't happened yet. One thing that's interesting though, as soon as we came out with our detachable grid, there was a few companies that did some stuff super similar. And I think that was just kind of it was an obvious. It wasn't like a super creative thing. Like as soon as you see Tegris and you mess with it a little bit, and you see the popularity of like the what are they called, the like the zip on panels and
Oh
stuff
yeah.
like that, you can
Yep.
see it coming. So it's not like that was super innovative of us, right? It was if you're in the gear design game, I think that kind of would have been an obvious advancements to work towards. But we did all kind of do that at the same time, which I was glad. We did do that first. From my knowledge, we designed ours first, and then you have some other companies that did some similar stuff, and their own cool, like unique ways or whatever. In fact, the two that
Yeah.
I'm specifically thinking of, as soon as we did our Tegris detachable grid, which buckles into the quasum buckles and then
Right.
around your waist, I think it was Shaw Concepts came out with a similar Tegris panel, but like you wear it like a backpack. So that's cool because
Okay.
they're still different, right? And like if you want to
Yeah.
use ours like a backpack, like you're gonna have a bad time. It's not
Right.
designed for that, right? But they gave it like some cool straps that like made it comfortable for that. And then there was Faro Concepts who made like the zip-on panel. I think it's Faro. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Faro. Yeah. So they have the
Yeah.
Tegris panel, but it's like a zip-on thing, right? So similar idea, all done in different ways. But no, that's the only one I can think of where it's like, oh dang, like somebody's already done that product. So and again, that
Yeah.
didn't happen there. To my knowledge, we were the first to come out with that, but like these all happened within like the span of like a month, right? So we dropped ours, and then within like a month, in between when I started it and that month, I saw Shaw Concepts and Faro Concepts come out with something, right?
Okay.
So that was kind of cool to see. Like it kind of definitely says, hey, yeah, it was probably a good idea when two other companies are
Right.
also working towards a solution for that problem, right? It reinforces like, hey, yeah, that's a good problem to find a solution for. But no, other than I mean, no, I don't think there's been another experience where it's running into somebody's gear. We're like, oh, dang, they already have it. There's a
Yeah.
couple design things like Spiritus does that on the flaps that cover the tops of the magazines. I
Yep.
forget the name of it. It's a really cool design though. They're just like the laser cut Ys
Yeah.
that kind of break up the outline of it. That looks awesome, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, there's not like a genius way to like come up with like a different version of that, right? You
Right.
can do like a couple few things, but I mean that's something that's like, man, I wish I'd thought of that first because that one looks pretty
Yeah.
fucking cool, right?
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. It looks definitely looks and it performs like a function too. It like breaks up like the outline. Like that's
Right.
a huge thing. Like that's like the whole point of like the ghillie suits, right? Just to break up well, not the whole point, but
Right.
a percentage of the goal of a ghillie suit is just to break up like the outline from like a human figure, right? So yeah, I thought that was a pretty sweet design. So I wish I thought of that one first, but
Well, and I love this idea of you don't you don't go out of your way to try to copy others. And there's sometimes, especially in the review side, where we see so much stuff,
mhm,
plate carriers and battle belts and things like that, where you have two different companies and you're like, clearly this is a stitch for stitch ripoff of
yeah,
this other company. And there's two that come to mind. One of them that I thought was really interesting. I had someone from one company at SHOT Show who was telling me like, yeah, this other company came and was like, came to our booth, took pictures of all our stuff. Like I knew what they were doing because they
Yeah,
just wanted to
same.
copy our stuff. And I wish, hey, at least buy it. That
Yeah,
was kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And then,
Buy it and back engineer it and then do your stupid thing.
right. And then I had another person that straight up told me, I'm not going to name the company, but I told Walsh, I'm like, I do not want to deal with these guys ever.
Mm,
I had a guy that was like, I will straight up rip off designs from Agilite and First Spear. He's like, I will rip off designs from those two any day I can.
yeah.
And I was like,
Interesting.
I don't need to deal with these guys
Yeah.
anymore. So
Yeah.
it's very
It
refreshing
also
to
really
hear
doesn't
someone.
add any like benefit to anybody, right? Like if you
Right.
think about like the community, right? If something cool has already been done for the community, cool, that's been done like for the community. Like the community has reaped that benefit. There's no need for me to also
Yeah.
do that. That's not going to add
Well,
anything
don't
else,
tell me
right?
about it. Like, why are you telling me? Why are
Yeah.
you
Oh yeah.
telling
No,
me?
no, I don't mean to tell you. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
telling like the person that's telling me, yeah, I straight up rip off these people. I'm like, why are you telling me that? I
Yeah.
don't need to know that. Like that doesn't make you look cooler in my book.
Yeah. That's
So
not it, Chief.
for me, it's very refreshing to hear you say, I go out of my way to not try to copy anyone.
Mm,
If I see a product that's similar to a design that I'm already thinking of, okay, well, I'll take the good there, combine it with the good that I have, and the whole industry benefits from
yeah.
innovation. I think.
Yeah. For sure.
Um, so I really enjoy hearing you say that because it's refreshing from some of the stuff that I see in the review world. Um, I'm curious though, with all the stuff that you have put out over the years. You said you've been doing this since, was it 2017?
I got out in
You started.
2017. I started to lightly mess with stuff. Probably
Okay.
around 2018, I was heavy into it, and then Javelin was
Okay.
like officially founded in 2019.
So 5 years. Well,
Mm,
I don't know when in 2019, but let's say four plus years.
mm.
What would you say is a product that you look back on and you're like, man, I'm a badass because I
Yeah,
came
yeah.
up with that. What's the thing you're most proud of?
Yeah, so it's a the plate bags are pretty cool. That was a fun one because we looked at it and you're making your plate bags and then like one day you look at it and you're like, wait, why would the plates go in from the bottom? Like doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody does it from the bottom. So when you're designing it, you just that's kind of where you start. You're just like, okay, so here's my rough shape. It's roughly the shape of a plate. And the plate's going from the bottom, so I need some Velcro stuff. And then you're like, well, wait a second. So that was a cool one. And then it opened up some different like design opportunities, like our shoulder straps work in like a really unique way too, because of the top loading design of the plate, right?
Okay.
There were some cool designs that went in for that. And then there's been so many iterations of that thing's been pretty cool. But honestly, I think that my favorite design is the chest rig that we're about to release. That actually solves the very first problem that we sought out to fix, and it was how to change over your plate carrier setup rapidly, right? So like I'm sure like you're aware of this, and if you're not, you could easily imagine it, right? If you're like mollying on pouches, right, that
Mm-hmm.
takes forever, right? So
Yeah, it's a
let's
pain.
say you have you're hanging out on deployment and then they're like, hey, this we're doing this tonight. We're going on this mission. We're gonna leave in like an hour and a half, something like that, right? That could be more or less depending on the deployment and the mission, what have you,
Right.
right? But I was like a sniper, right? So like I changed my plate carrier setup a lot because like maybe I want to take out like a 338 platform instead of a 308 platform, right? Maybe I don't need a sniper rifle. Maybe I'm taking a 5.56 platform or something like that, right? Anytime you change rifles, you need to change the pouches that carry those rifle magazines. So I would change
Yeah.
over my plate carrier setup all of the time. And there was one instance in particular where I really didn't have that much time to set up my plate carrier at like really how I wanted it. So I felt like
Mm-hmm.
I was about to go into this thing like not how I would ideally want the setup, right? I was gonna make it work, but luckily the thing got pushed and I was able to get some time and kind of set the thing up. But that was like a huge problem. I was like, dude, I'm about to go into something pretty important, not set up exactly how I'd like to be set up, right?
Yeah.
I pulled some other guys and I was like, how often would you change your plate carrier setup to adapt to the mission set that you're about to go out on if you had the time? And if it was like, maybe obviously like if you had like the different pouches and different stuff like that, a lot of people said, oh yeah, no, I would definitely change it, but because of the restrictions, like the time restrictions and different things like that, I just run it as it is, you know. So I was like, okay, well, this is a pretty big problem, right?
Yeah.
So that was actually the first design we worked on before even working on any plate bags. It was like a cummerbund system, and it was designed to go on some of the cry plate carriers like the AVS and the JPC and stuff like that,
Sure.
right? So that's probably my favorite design, especially I think for two reasons. Seeing the evolution of it, like, dude, we're about to drop it. I think Monday, right? It's about to
Okay.
drop. So how it looks now, super clean, super aesthetically pleasing. The thing looks badass. Its function is top tier, right? It's super unique. It's very innovative, and it solves some specific problems, right? Not only does it let you change over your plate carrier super quick, but another thing is, like, if you have your plate carrier, you usually have a whole different chest rig setup, right? So this
Right.
allows you to kind of just convert it. It's kind of like, the best way to describe it is like a split rig chest rig. You know how like they have like the tube in the front, it's like
Yep.
that. So it's like got the ease of adding it, except instead of the tube or like the buckles in the middle, it's like a Velcro connection system. And then the
Okay.
plate carrier setup is added lastly. And then you can
Oh,
take that platform and you can change, you can add that to your plate bags if you want, right? So it's
okay.
not like integrating a plate bag through some weird straps in a different way. You would attach it to the plate bags in the same way you would just like a regular cummerbund. So it's got a
Um,
super clean integration to the plate bags. So if you want to change over your plate carrier setup between multiple like setups to choose from, right?
mhm.
That's an awesome benefit. And then if you want to change from plate carrier to chest rig, you can do that without having to have like a whole different setup. So it does solve some super cool problems, and seeing the evolution of it from like how we first designed it is pretty awesome. So that's got to be my favorite product.
Okay.
The very first prototypes of it are really fun to like go back and look at, because the thing has changed so much. And initially it was like such a complex system that did add the same benefit. Like once you did all your stuff, like, yeah, you could change over your plate carrier set pretty quick, right? But through really like years of tweaking with it and messing with it and whatnot, obviously not like every day all day for years in a row, but over the course of years working on it
Yeah.
in different bouts, right? It is as simple as it could be while solving as many problems as possible while looking good as hell. So that's probably my favorite design.
Well, that's cool too, because the trifecta of solving a problem,
Mm.
looking cool, and the ease of use.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. Like,
exactly. Yep. Yeah.
so, what was my SF buddy would always tell me something like rule number one, always look cool.
Always look cool, man. Yeah, you
Rule
always
number
gotta look
two,
cool. You always gotta know where you're going. And if
yeah,
you don't know where you're going, you gotta
at
look
least you look
cool.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that gets mistaken sometimes with like literally looking cool, like with like sunglasses,
Yeah,
you know, I don't know, maybe smoking a cigarette or something like that, right?
yeah,
But I think it's more the look cool is in be cool, you know? Like if you don't know
yeah,
where you're going, be cool, right? Like be
right.
cool, right? Uh I mean, I think part of being cool is looking cool, right? But yeah, I think the original purpose of that is if you yeah, look cool as in be cool. You
Yeah,
know? And then you know, if you don't know where you're going, at least look cool, you know.
yeah. Well, and it's cool because Um, I mean I love the looks. I was telling Walsh, just like
Mm,
I don't own any of Javelin Concept products.
not yet.
I'm gonna yeah, not yet. That's gonna be corrected here shortly.
Yeah, yeah.
But I love the looks of them. And
Oh
Walsh and
yeah.
I go back and forth a lot. I'm an M81 Woodland guy. Like I was in the military when
Mhm.
I was issued those.
Oh yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
it's kind of cool because I still have a blouse, M81 blouse,
Mhm.
woodland blouse, whatever you call it. And my daughter came in. I have a teenage daughter, and they were doing like military appreciation night at one of the football games. And
Yeah.
so she was like, "Hey, do you have anything that I could wear?" And I was like, "I have this M81 blouse that has,
Yeah.
my last name on it, which is her last name." So she put it on and she's like, "This is so cool. I
Yeah.
can't believe you have," like, super excited. So a lot of times there's this, I don't know, like a bonding type of memory that ties me to a certain color scheme, M81 in
Mhm.
this case. Whereas Walsh is like, M81 is stupid, multicam for life, right?
Dude, he's
And
wrong
it's
about that. Just so you know,
yeah,
he's wrong about that. But
yeah, we joke all the time about that. Anytime I bring up, he's like, "Hey, check this out," and I'm like, he'll send me a picture of some new gear from some other company, and what do you think? I'm like, "Do they make it in M81?" He's like, "Would you stop,
yeah,
please? I'm talking about the design. What do you think of the design?" Like, I
yeah,
don't see anything.
yeah.
Um,
Nah, that's
so
funny.
I get that. I mean, there's a lot of times, even outside of the gear world, where
Mm.
if I, like my favorite movie of all time is this movie called Hopscotch with Walter Matthau. It's old, came out in 1980. Is
Okay.
it the best movie in the world? Like, no, I don't even think it's in IMDb's top 100. But I've watched that movie so many times with my dad. Like the memories that are intertwined with that movie make that
Yeah,
movie the most important movie in my life.
yeah.
Um, and so it's kind of cool hearing you talk about the design of this chest rig, because having it solve a problem, having it look cool, having it be easy to use, and then also the design phases of it.
Mm.
I would assume there's so much emotional and mental intertwining of the design of that yeah, this is my favorite product that we have, because there's so much blood, sweat, and tears and time that went into the design of this. So
Mhm.
totally makes sense to me.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, because it took so long, you've said you've been working, not every day, but working on this for a while. Do you normally run into stresses on the design and the production side of the house? Like, I need to design this quickly, and you're put under a lot of stress, maybe self-induced, but do you deal with that stuff as you're operating this business?
To a degree, there was really one time that's kind of a funny story that I'll tell you, which was like the only time I've really been stressed about it, right? Because a deadline was coming up, and well, I'll tell you that story in a second, right? So there was really one time where I've been stressed about it, but the other times I wouldn't view it as stress. I'm hyper fixated on it, and I work on it all of the time, right? For the like entirety of every day that I'm awake. If I'm working on something, I can't help but think about it all of the time, right? I'll just go into like a little design phase, and you can tell when I'm in this design phase because I drive slower in my car, because while I'm driving, I'm thinking of things. My house will be like a fucking mess because like I'm not like all of the laundry will be sitting on the floor for a fucking week because like I'm on Fusion 360, like messing with
Yeah.
DXF files and stuff like that, right? So most of the time, I think maybe that would stress out other people, but I don't view it as like stressful. Like I'm just consumed by it, basically.
Okay. Well,
um,
it seems like more of it motivates you, like
yeah, yeah,
being
yeah,
put under a deadline is kind of the motivation to get this done, instead
yep,
of like hand wringing, like how am I gonna do this,
yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
is cool. I mean, some people, the fact that you view that as, or that it kind of lights a fire under you and motivates you, is awesome.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And you learn a ton from like failing designs, right? So like if you're going to make a new product, you'll make the first prototype and you're always convinced this is going to be awesome, this is going to be perfect, nailed it on the first try. And then
Right.
something about it totally sucks, or like there's some way you can't sew it up, right? Like it can't maneuver around the machines, or like there's different problems, right? Because you have to, when you're designing stuff, you also have to worry about how to like physically make it, right? Like you have to
Right.
put it together, right? So there's sometimes like things that'll come up that'll be like, oh damn, like I cannot make this way
Yeah.
because of this restriction or whatever, right? But it's kind of similar to what I was saying earlier about just like doing a bunch of things in a bunch of different ways. Like you just like learn so much from it, right? It's kind of helps with the creative process, right? Like problem solution, problem solution, problem solution. um, I was reading about this thing the other day that's maybe worth noting here, right? I forget what it was. It was a class that they were doing at some college, and I think it was for like a video or something like that. I'm not
Yeah.
super sure, but it was basically a project, right? And they took half the class and they told them, okay, make the best version of this. You have all semester to make the best version of this, and that's all you have to do. They told the other half of the class, you have to make as many of these as possible. And that's all they told them. By the end of the semester, every time they ran this, the part of the class who had just made as many as possible always ended up with a better product than the people who were told only worry about making the best version of this, right? Because just through so many iterations, they had learned so many things, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that would stress other people out if they're trying to make like a cummerbund or something like that and it's not working out and they spend a bunch of time on a design and then it fails and then they're like, oh well, now I have to go back to square one. But that's not stressful to me at all because I'm aware that that's part of the process and it's a very beneficial part of the process. You just learn a bunch. So going
Yeah.
into round 2 and round 3 and round 7 and round 13, it's
Right.
gonna be awesome. But yeah, the only time I was actually stressed about it was when we were releasing our jack pack.
Mhm.
I had designed like a really cool Tegris portion on the inside of the backpack that you basically used these like keys and you would switch these keys to make it fixed or detachable, right?
Okay.
And the detachable key, I had this design for, I had done multiple like iterations of it before, and I was convinced it was good, but it was all just designed in my head and on Fusion 360, which is like the software I use to make the DXF files that our laser cutter will cut, right?
Okay.
And I was like convinced it was good in my head, right? I had done enough versions of it where I was like, nah, yeah, it'll be good, right? So I was like, I got online, I was like, all right, this thing's dropping in like a week from now or whatever it was, right? And then I think it was right before this wedding, right? That was in San Diego. Like right before I go, I make the last version of it and it didn't work at all. I was like,
Oh,
my God. So yeah, like there was this thing I did not foresee happening. And then I was like, that's a huge problem. Like it basically was bad enough to where I was like, I have to scrap this. Right. So that was the only time I've really been stressed about it because like I knew there was this problem. I was thinking about it, like the whole wedding or whatever. Right. But then the next day, hella hungover. I'm like, okay, I have like a week to come up with like a whole new thing here. Right.
yeah.
And from that pressure, we designed like the jack pack detachable key, which is I think awesome. It is definitely like a good solution to a problem that like I'd experienced while I was in, right? So I was
Right.
happy with it, but yeah, it was a ton of pressure because I had already announced that hey, here's the hard date that we're dropping it, right? Um, if I had needed to, like if it wasn't there, I would have obviously just moved the release date rather than
Sure.
release a shitty product,
Yeah.
right? But like I was pretty motivated to find like to meet that deadline, right? So we did, and it was awesome by the time that we released it, right? But that was really the only time where I was like, oh my god. Another thing though is I work really well under like pressure. So like
Mhm.
whereas most people would maybe be like stressed out, like, oh, I only have a week and I'm like starting from square one, blah 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 blah. That's like literally when I do my best work. So like
Yeah.
I love like a little bit of pressure. You'll hear a lot of stories like I'm an entrepreneur, right? So like outside of Javin, I just like do a lot with like, entrepreneurial stuff, right? And the story you always hear is like people are like, man, like I had just gotten fired from my job and I had just
Right.
did this and I had just did this and there was all this pressure and then it was like this make or break moment. And then all of a sudden it like works and that's like, okay, what are the chances that there's like 100 of these stories in which that's always the formula? I think part of
Right.
the formula is it has to be a lot of pressure, right? And there's like, okay, it's go time. This has got to work, right? Um, that also relates here a little bit. That makes me think of people going through RASP. If you have like a backup plan, you're more likely to fail because like as things start to get like a little harder, you're like, oh, that backup plan
Yeah.
starts to sound like better and better, right? But
Yep.
like I never once thought about like quitting or dropping out or anything because there was absolutely no other plan than be a ranger. So like no matter like what happened or whatever the fuck, like it's like yeah, no, this is the plan, and if this fails, I am fucked.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, man, I love that pressure. I love that pressure. So, I
Well,
think,
and to find someone that thrives in that instead of having it break them,
yeah,
that was when I was getting out of the military. I did not have. I was applying for jobs, and the job that my last job that I was in, I applied for the month that I separated, and
oh
I
yeah,
didn't get the job until 8 months later. And
oh,
so
okay,
it was my we only had two kids at the time, but all four of us were in one bedroom. I was applying for jobs and going to school full time, and my wife was working part time, and it was it was like the as a especially as a father, as a husband, like I want to be able to provide for my family,
mm,
and I feel like I'm failing right? I'm not doing that. And so I think you're right. That pressure is really the motivation behind, okay, what am I going to do? Like, who am I? I'm going to be a squeaky wheel for someone. Who am I
Yeah.
going to bug
Mhm.
to make sure that this works out? And it ended up working out. It was total miracle. That's how we look at it in our home.
Yeah.
But it was the best move for our family by far.
Yeah.
Like it really
That's
set us
awesome.
up for success.
Yeah.
Um, cool, man. Yeah, I think I'm wondering, with the stresses that you run into as part of your job, is there anything that you go to for release, like sports or working out or jujitsu or all of the above? What do you find that's best helps you to decompress?
Yeah, I'll go on a lot of walks, I'll tell you
Okay.
that. I love going on walks. Every now and then, if I need a break, I try to just like change gears, right? So like I'll work on just something entirely different. Maybe sometimes it's an entirely different facet of the business, right? So I'll
Yeah.
go on like our website and I'll just like get obsessed with like improving the website and like maybe like the layout of it, right? Or like the click throughs, like how could you make that like more intuitive or be more user friendly or like help with like conversion rates and different stuff like that. There's different things there. I'm not a real designer, so I use Canva a lot. And yeah, like every now and then I'll just hop on there and I'll try to make like cool different things for like Instagram stories or posts or different things like that. Um, Other times I don't know, dude, I'll a wide variety of things, dude. Like I'll even build Legos, bro. If I'm like too wrapped up
Okay.
in something, I'm like, I'm gonna go build some Legos, dude. I In some of our old photos, this is a funny story for anybody who's been like watching the our page for a little bit, right? Back in the day, we had this range van, and like I bought it for like $500 or something like that, right? And it was perfect because it was like an 18 passenger van. We took out
Yeah.
all of the seats and we would take it to and from the shooting range where we would like shoot and then take a lot of our content, right? When we moved the company to Texas, we no longer needed that thing, so I sold it for like $600, which was insane because it was like a '98 Ford. Well, I'm sorry, an
You made
'89.
$100 off of
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it turned a profit. I'm a businessman, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It was like an '89 Ford Club wagon. It was like a horrible thing, right? I initially tried to sell it on Craigslist, and I think somebody threatened me within like 30 minutes. I was like,
oh,
maybe
wow.
maybe this is not the audience I want to interact with. The people who are on Craigslist looking for an '89 Ford Club wagon, right?
Yeah.
So I sold it to somebody else, got like $600 for it, and I was like, yeah, dang, what do I want to like do with this? And then what I did with it is I went to Target and I bought like every Star Wars Lego set that they had.
So
And then like yeah, I thought it would like help with like creative processes or whatever, right? To just like if you're too stressed, like just change gears, just build some Legos, like do anything like
yeah.
that. But yeah, a wide variety of stuff. There's no like one thing like I'll go to, but sometimes I'll just like take some time off. That always works.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
working too
Absolutely.
much, just stop
Yep.
working for like a little bit. Or yeah, take shorter amounts of time off, which I would say is what going for a walk is. Take
Yeah.
30 minutes off, something like that.
Yeah, it
Uh,
definitely helps.
yeah, and Mario
That
Party, dude. Dude, Mario Party is badass, bro. On Nintendo Switch, that or Smash Bros.
yeah.
Yeah,
We used to
little
have
things like
both
that.
with my son.
Mhm.
It's funny that you mentioned Star Wars Legos because sometimes I think if my angle is right, my camera angle is right, some of my reviews you'll see it's from the Mandalorian, but it's
Yeah.
ATST Lego in the side shot of my view, and so
And is that the one that has the four legs? Is that what
no,
I'm
that's the one that has two legs, the chicken
Okay.
walker.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Um, so that was kind of, I was like stressed out one day and I was like on my way home from work. I was like exact same thing. Went to Target, like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have like $40 to spend. I'm gonna buy this Lego. And I
Uh,
come home and like on the kitchen table and my wife's like, "Are you seriously building a Lego right now?" Like, yep.
yes, I am. Yeah. Yeah. It's called
Yeah.
relaxing. Look it up.
Yeah. So I totally get you on that one,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, working
well,
out's
that's
always great too, though. Like every
right.
now and then, I'll just be like, dude, I need to sprint. I need to literally move and get my heart rate as fast as I can get
Okay.
it. So that's another great one. In Austin, everyone plays pickleball. I don't play that much pickleball, but I've desperately been trying to make that my whole personality. Pickleball. I'm kind of like small and like a little skinny, so like as a byproduct of the way that as a byproduct of my body type, I'm kind of good at rock climbing. So like I'll do some
Oh,
stuff
okay.
like that, and yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know stuff.
Good
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, all kinds of
Well, that's
random.
awesome, man.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun, man.
I went through all the questions. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with you today.
Cool, man. Yeah.
Um, last thing that I'll ask for:
Mhm.
where can people find more information about Javelin Concepts and you? You guys you're on Instagram, or you on Twitter? I know you have a YouTube. Where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram at Javlin Concepts. That's the best place to like look at all of that's where we put out the most content. So if you want to get a lot of different like shots of the gear, a lot of the different like colorways, keep up with like giveaways, different specialty color drops. Like we just did an M81 woodland drop. We'll also do arid, tropic, multicam black drop, stuff like that. Instagram is for sure where we put out the most. You can follow us on X or Twitter or whatever it's called now, if you want to be like one of 50 people to do that. We don't do a lot on Twitter. Technically, we're on there, but YouTube would be a fun place to follow us too. You're not going to find too much on there now, but this year is where we're trying to put out. YouTube is where we're trying to put out the most content on, right? So, yeah, that's like one of our major goals for 2024 is just making YouTube our primary means of advertising as opposed to Instagram. So we have
Okay.
all kinds of fun ideas for the types of content that we want to put out there. And like I said, we have like a good group of guys here, right? They're all like former First Bat guys, right? So it's a fun team to kind of get into the YouTube game a lot more than just like right now. It's a lot of like user manuals and like little demonstrations of products and stuff like that. A little cut and dry action that are helpful if you're like about to buy a product or you've just bought a product or something like that. But entertainment side of things, we're definitely going to try to pick up the YouTube. So I'd
Yeah.
say definitely follow that. I think that's just Javin Concepts as well.
Okay.
But yeah, that's it, man. Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
hey, again, I appreciate you taking some time and
Yeah.
spending
Thanks
with
for
us
having me.
today. And for those of you that are listening or watching, I hope you enjoy this, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Awesome.